This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. We're here at Dual Citizen Brewing Company. Thank you all for coming. This is awesome. This is awesome. We're gonna reset the vibes here after what happened in Game 3. I'm joined here by Kyle Theige, Britt, Robson. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. This is really cool. Let's reset. Let's talk about last night. Britt, I'll start with you first. What happened?
What happened is what you might expect to have happen. The Timberwolves had two series-defining wins, and everybody crowned them. And the consensus favorites coming out of the West said we're not dead yet. If you think about how you felt about the Wolves before the series started and how you felt about the Wolves after Game 2, you understand how the Wolves are feeling about themselves. And that's really not a mindset by which you beat the defending champions. So I think what happened was, as much as they said the right things, it's really easy to say the right things and to say, we're ready for Denver's best shot. They're going to come with their best shot. Well, they had 3 days of film. They had 3 days for the calf of Jamal Murray to get better, 3 days for the ankle of KCP to get better, and 3 days to hear people fawn over them in the national media. And that's just a dynamic that is extremely difficult to overcome. So I think what happened was the Wolves, despite their best intentions, were a little bit in their own bag. And Denver was a desperate, very, very good basketball team.
Kyle, we talked about this a little bit last night, too. I was thinking about it, like, kind of starting to watch it back last night. How much of it to you was energy from the Wolves? Or maybe the energy of the Wolves versus the energy of Denver?
100% energy. And since we recorded last night, I was thinking about this morning, but there's a really interesting comparison between what happened after Game 82 versus what happened after Game 2 of the Western Conference semifinals. So after Game 82, you get spanked at home. You have a week where everyone's telling you you're going to get swept, and you kind of marinate on that with no one believes in us, and then they come out and they play super desperate at home, defend Target Center, go to Phoenix, where, again, you're kind of desperate because you don't want to give up any bit of the rope, and that's how they close out Phoenix. After Game 2 of Denver, the way they beat Denver, it's the complete polar opposite of Game 82, where you are not. I mean, it was a whole week of Good Morning America, not if they're going to win a title, but how many titles. Just a lot of starting to feel yourself and enjoy your own scent. And then they come out last night.
Not one, not two.
Yeah, exactly. And they just came out last night, and you knew it 30 seconds in, right? After the first possession, you just knew that they just didn't have that same extra level of the D word we've talked about all playoffs, desperation. And you're not going to sweep the champs, right? But I say this as we get another round of beer. Shout out to, again, Dual Citizen.
Yeah, yes.
This all came together 10 days ago, and we're like, do we do another live show, like on a Saturday between Games 3 and 4? And I was like, well, what if they're down 0-3? Like, I don't know about you, but I've never pre-gamed a funeral. I was just like, I don't want to do that. So I think we need to erase, as we reset the vibes, how they got to 2-1. And just look at, they are 2-1. They have a game tomorrow at home. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they won 2 in Denver, but it's 2-1. You're at home tomorrow, and I think the loudest arena in the league right now. And just like, that's the energy you bring back into this thing. But last night, the energy from everyone involved was just really low, and it kind of makes sense. One team was desperate. One team was kind of feeling themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I thought at Target Center, for the first 5 minutes it was there, or even like the 15 minutes before, like It wasn't like an energy that wasn't there to be matched by them. Like the fan base was there. I think it was just Denver kind of stepping up and meeting the moment, but also to me, so much of it was basketball things of why the first quarter went different. I mean, it was clear that they were like, all right, you're gonna guard us full court. We are going to go faster. They just got into their offense extremely faster in there, and that took a little bit of the Wolves' teeth away. They also, had Aaron Gordon initiating, and we know we've talked about this a ton, right? Like, Rudy Gobert they want to put Rudy Gobert on Aaron Gordon. Well, if Aaron Gordon's the point guard, that's a little funky, right? If your center's on him. So I thought that was a smart adjustment by Denver. And then they were kind of just getting everything on the angles with Jokic and Murray, and they made a ton of adjustments. And to your point, Kyle, with the Phoenix thing, it was kind of like the Wolves enter Game 3 like the Suns entered Game 1.
Yeah.
Where you're like, all right, well, we're just going to try and keep doing what we're doing, and if they adjust, we'll try to adjust to that. And it's kind of tough to be in that spot where you don't really know what the opponent is going to do outside of the idea that you know there's going to be something different, right, Britt? Like, that stood out to me, and I just rewatching at least the beginning of the game this morning. They chose, to me, the correct things to go to more of. But now that the Wolves know that's going to happen, probably, right, that they're going to play faster, they're going to play through Gordon a little bit more, it's going to be less of just the Jokic show.
Right.
I think if you're the Wolves, right, you can kind of be ready for that.
Well, there's macro and micro. Let me do macro first. Macro is that you're playing the consensus team to come out of the West in a Game 4 where you're up 2-1 at home. And let's say Denver wins. It's a 2-out-of-3 series against the reigning champs with the reigning MVP, the consensus team, and I still like our chances, quite frankly. I mean, this is a team that has played defense all season. I mean, we really do have to understand that the Nuggets are going to present an enormous challenge, and if you get past them for at least a little bit, I think the road gets a little easier.
I think it's easier the rest of the way, man. I mean,
so, but to your point, I think that moving the ball and hard screens were the two things that happened last night that really made a difference. If you think about the Denver Nuggets on offense, at least the way I think about the Denver Nuggets on offense, I'm thinking of Jokic crab dribbling or coming up the floor and surveying, but I'm not thinking about the ball moving around 3 times, 4 times. I'm thinking about surgery by the MVP. And maybe there's a one more pass after Jokic makes his pass, but there's not usually 2 or 3. What they decided to do, and it was a very, very smart strategy, was to get Jokic off the ball almost immediately and make sure that Jamal Murray gets it within 2 or 3 passes in a place where he can score, so that he removes all the bad juju and ghosts from the previous 2 games and starts to get into a rhythm the way he needs to get into a rhythm, and the Wolves begin to realize that, oh, we don't have the Denver Nuggets we had in the first 2 games. Because let's face it, on offense, that Denver Nuggets team was subpar. That Denver Nuggets team was not the Denver Nuggets of the regular season. So they reestablished primacy in who they were. And the Wolves, as I said, had a week of not thinking about it that way and struggled to recover. And maybe the recovery would have happened, but Jaden McDaniels got 2 fouls very early. And he is crucial in this series. And then, as it turned out, the bench couldn't hit shots. And the bench needs to hit shots. Naz Reid in particular, I think he's a really important person in this series. And if Naz is not making shots, and he's a confidence player, if he misses the first couple, you could be in for a rough ride. So that's basically the way I saw it.
Kyle, when we were on the drive over here, you said to me, I hate Jamal Murray. That was a big story in the game, right?
Yeah.
Jamal, how he played, how healthy he looked, maybe comparatively to the other series, or just that he kind of was doing Jamal Murray things, which I think part of the idea, right, of the Wolves are up 2-0 and you start thinking Wolves in 4 is that Murray's not going to be able to be Murray at any time in the series. Now we've seen Jamal Murray look like himself, and that now becomes slowing him, stopping him, not letting him do that again, right? That becomes the path to winning this series, it seems to me.
And he just did what he did in the bubble, right? Like, he hit some really tough shots. The defense, again, the energy was low. It was, as we talked about last night, it was like, that's the energy they brought to Portland. When you play the Blazers, and you just kind of know, like, we can just kind of zone through this for 24 minutes. We'll pick it up in the third. That's not what you do against the champs. But, yeah, I mean, Jamal Murray was kind of bubble Murray. He was as hot as a heat pack, but they will find ways with
You've
the
been working on that one.
No, that just actually came to me. But thank you. Jaden, but Jaden and Nikhil will find. I mean, this team has, when they've been boxing analogy all year, punched in the mouth, found ways to respond. They didn't last night, but that's okay. Like, they will respond in Game 4, and they'll find ways. They just got to kind of, the whistle is the whistle, and Tony Brothers, whatever, the officiating was so weird in Game 2 versus Game 3, and Britt was kind of on that the other night. But you just got to find more ways to make his life difficult, and that's another thing about the energy. They did not make his life difficult last night, and credit to Denver for finding ways to get him in more space, to get him, against Carl and some pick and rolls, but they just got to kind of be more physical with him because that is an advantage they have of throwing multiple bodies at him, and Nikhil, Jaden, and even Kyle in some spots.
Yeah, I think that I tend to agree with Dane a little bit more in terms of the fact I don't think the Wolves arrived with zero energy or were terrible or Portland energy. I think that they arrived with the idea that this will be a feeling out time. We will figure out what they're doing. They will figure out what we're doing. But this is a team we've beaten easily, or certainly beaten easily once, and beaten less easily to begin with, their opening game. But I think that Cat was on. I think that Ant was making the right plays. By the way, I disagree with the people who thought Ant had a bad game. I thought that there were definitely times when he could have been.
Ant?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ant was just basically being a leader again. And Cat had 7 shots. He hit 4 out of 5 threes, and he had 7 shots overall. So there is, as they say, meat on the bone, for something there. And I do think part of it is Denver just played twice as well as they played in the first 2 games. So give it up to a very good basketball team, understanding that nobody comes back from 3-0, and they don't want to fade in the second round after winning a ring and having an MVP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're a proud team. In retrospect, if I had had my thinking cap on straight instead of being besotted by those 2 wins like everybody else, I would have realized that this is really maybe the toughest game the Wolves will face in terms of circumstantial attitudes. And so I'm not mourning last night's loss. I'm realizing I should have probably expected a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. There was kind of this idea, and I don't know if it was really based in anything factual, but it seemed like there was something wrong with Denver, right? Like in the first 2 games, and maybe there wasn't. Maybe what was wrong with Denver in the first 2 games was Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker were guarding Jamal Murray, and then the Wolves also had Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and Naz Reid to guard Nikola Jokic. Like, that might have just been that's a pretty good advantage to have if you're the Wolves in that situation. They make some adjustments to start figuring that out, and then the whistle changes to allow less physicality in that game. That was to the Jaden point, I think was very much a turning point in that game. And I know when we were at Falling Knife the other day, I poo-pooed the reffing idea, but I do have to cop to the concept that it must have been confusing that you play Game 2 when anything goes, and then you come out for Game 3, if you're Jaden McDaniels or whoever, with the idea that anything's going to go physically, and then it's whistle, whistle, whistle. So I will say I was wrong. That was a factor. I don't. Thanks, Frank.
Good job, Frank.
But it stands out to me as something to pay attention to going forward in understanding what the whistle is, and then the team that loses the series is going to be the team that loses emotional control in the most games. Denver did in Game 2, and the Wolves did in Game 3. So it is a factor, whether or not it's corrupt or whatever. I'm not really my opinion, but I think that was definitely a swing factor, particularly in the beginning of the game. Jaden picks up 2 in the first 5 minutes, picks up another one at the beginning of the second quarter, and as many of us hypothesized, turns out Jaden's like extremely, extremely important in this series, as evidenced by being a plus 50 in games 1 and game 2. So Kyle, what I'm thinking is Jaden that's what I'm going to be looking at in the first quarter of like, oh, Jaden got that first one, is he going to get that second one? Because he matters in this because Murray matters in this.
For sure. And I think you'll know a lot about the outcome of that game in the first 12 minutes. But I also, too, and I'm curious for Britt's take because we haven't talked to you yet about this, but I thought last night that was the most frustrated I've seen Finch, and he's sitting second row and stuff. But I thought the coaching staff as a whole.
Yeah, could you see that, Britt? I couldn't see that from where we were. I had a different seat.
Yeah, I had better seats. I just didn't think they made many adjustments on the fly. I mean, that was a tough spot for Micah to be. Denver is throwing you all these different things, and they didn't, there was 3 or 4 possessions in a row in the third quarter where Ant just doesn't touch the ball, right? And for Britt's point, like, Ant probably played better than you and I thought. If he's the only one playing well, like, what did we say last night? Who played well on offense for the Wolves? Carl, because he hit 4 to 5 threes. Well, he had 6 of his 7 shots in the first half. He took 1 shot in the second half. And they didn't call off the Dogs until, 5 minutes left in the fourth? So they didn't really run any structure. They didn't really go to the rim. I think that'll be something to look for in Game 4. There's no rim protection. Nikola Jokic is not interested in protecting the rim. I think they'll get downhill more. They'll find ways to get Ant at the rim. Then that will just organically lead to more free throw opportunities because I don't think all the time you can say, well, he didn't shoot any free throws. He got a bad whistle. He said it. He's like, I wasn't aggressive. I just took a lot of threes. So I think that's one adjustment you make for Game 4 is just go north and south rather than east and west.
Britt, what do you make of the aggressiveness stuff? Because that's kind of like a hot button Ant topic, right? Dangerous.
Well, I mean, again, this is kind of a cliche. The guy is 22 years old, and he was driving into 3 people 6 weeks ago, and I was ripping him in print. And now we're saying, hey, why aren't you more aggressive? You're not more aggressive because you just got through picking apart a good defense by being somebody who welcomes the double teams and getting off the ball to exactly the right people. He did a lot of that last night. There was a wide open tray for a J-Mac in the corner. There were wide open trays all over the place. If your bench guys, the others, as everybody's now come to saying about them, are missing shots that are wide open shots because you're bringing a double team, then hindsight is 20/20. Ant, you should have gone to the hole because, but again, and maybe he'll balance that a little bit better this time. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that this guy has come into his own at this level. Who knows how many other levels he has, but he's figured it out now for about 6 weeks. And he was facing a desperate team. And he was doing what his instincts told him to do. And if his subs had hit shots, it would look a lot better on the stat sheet than it did. And as it was, I didn't think Ant had a bad game. Again, I think, yes, in retrospect, 20/20 hindsight, he should have gone to the rim more. But as somebody who criticized him fairly constantly,
to not do that.
Somebody who criticized him fairly constantly for playing hero ball and iso ball, I just don't. And one last thing, I would like to be right a little bit more definitively than I was right about the fouls. I will say that Jaden got a bad whistle on that first foul where he was with Jokic, and it was it didn't look like a foul. The other 3 were fouls.
Yep.
And it probably would have been fouls the other night. I think maybe the refs, Tony Brothers is a renowned whistler. But at the end of the day, I do think that, he made some stupid plays. He blocked Murray's shot and then tried to block it again when he didn't need to. And, that was his 4th foul. He let Porter cut on to the rim and turned around, and Rudy was there, and he was there. Rudy was there from the front. He was there from the back. He got the foul. That's a legit foul. So
it's weird with him, right, of like, what do we want that defense to look like? Like, when Carl would always get in foul trouble, it would be a pretty obvious adjustment of, like, take out the straight voltage, right? The emotional fouls, the silly ones. Not that Jaden's aren't silly, but they're, like, in the name of being overly aggressive. So I don't know. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and it's probably Sunday morning when you're listening to this before Game 4. Maybe you're thinking about your Prize Picks lineup to play some daily fantasy on Sunday afternoon, and I'm just looking here at what we have on the board for the Wolves. Maybe just Ant. Maybe you're thinking Ant is going to come back and bounce back in a big way in Game 4, so I'll just give you what his numbers are. Anthony Edwards, more or less than 27.5 points. Anthony Edwards, more or less than 5.5 rebounds, more or less than 5.5 assists, more or less than 2.5 3-pointers made. And there's a bunch of combination ones, points, rebounds, assists, all together, points, rebounds, all of those things. Anything you want, Ant, you can pretty much put in your daily fantasy lineup. You can look at the overall slate there for Game 4 if you feel like you know what's going to happen in this game. It's always fun to play Prize Picks. You can do so at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. Use promo code DANE for a $100 sign-up bonus. Today's show is also brought to you by Autograph, and I am excited to get some of you on Autograph. It's a free app that you can download at the App Store, Google Play Store, whatever. I'll just kind of pull it up here right now. It's like, what is on Autograph this morning? And this is the morning after Game 4 that I'm recording this. You can see up on Autograph. There's game recap from Canis Hoopus. There's my show from last night. There's Flagrant Howls. You got all the team content on here, all the post-game interviews, all in one place. It's just really convenient, and it's a free app for you to kind of consume all your Wolves content in one place. When you consume content through there, you get what are called fan coins on the Autograph app there, and you can use those fan coins for memorabilia drops. There's a ticket drop for Game 3, so it's a free app, place to consume Wolves content like this show. It's the Autograph app on the App Store or Google Play Store, and use referral code DaneMoore when you sign up at Autograph. Again, that's Autograph, the Autograph app, referral code DaneMoore. You know what I'm saying, Kyle? Like it's a weird sort of balance of, do you want to turn down McDaniel's aggression to get, to play defense, knowing that fouls are going to come with it? I'm not really sure what to do with that. I think if he's just going to be guarding Jamal Murray the whole game, he's probably going to get in some foul trouble, So then to that end, it's kind of about, can Nikhil come in and do it?
Right.
Yes, but really Kyle Anderson too then. Like, I just think Kyle Anderson, as frustrating as he looked offensively, the reality of the situation, if Jaden McDaniels gets in foul trouble, Kyle Anderson has to play, and Kyle Anderson has to play at the 3. And Kyle Anderson at the 3 is not Kyle Anderson at the 4. It just, bottom of the line, once Jaden gets in foul trouble, it kind of starts unraveling a little bit, but I don't know how, you know what I'm saying? Like, how to avoid that.
I would rather lose a series because Jaden McDaniels fouls out every time than try to tone down the Jaden McDaniels experience. You know what I mean? So, what did you say last night? It was a cage match on Tuesday or whatever, and last night was more of a salsa dance. It was a completely different whistle, but
I didn't say that.
You did describe it as a wrestling metaphor, but I would not tone down. If you start asking Jaden McDaniels to go from 100% intensity to 90%, you're losing the Jaden McDaniels experience. So I would more bank on a whistle that was, as we said, far left on one side and pivoted over here, that gets a little more in the middle. I'm not going to all of a sudden be asking Jaden McDaniels, who is your best perimeter defender and maybe the best perimeter defender in the league,
for sure,
to tone it down. That's not why he's on the team.
Right.
Let's get some questions up here.
No such thing as a stupid question. It can be about last night. It can be about whatever. We do have a fourth microphone there that I believe is on. So if anybody has anything you want to do, it's right up over here, Britt. While somebody comes up to ask a question, just because we haven't talked about it since last night.
Sure.
What other things from last night stood out to you?
Well, I think that the Wolves. I looked this up in the playoffs. The Wolves have the least of the 8 surviving teams. The Wolves have the least percentage of transition opportunities in their mix, and the highest point per possession on transition points. I understand
back to the regular season too. Yep.
Right. But I understand that's their style. They prefer to, dig in the half court and make sure the job is finished in the half court and not leak out or not jump out. But I think there's a little bit, they can tweak it a little bit more toward aggressive going to the hoop, especially if Denver is not making mistakes. The few mistakes they make, they need to capitalize on.
All right, we can take a question over here, and again, if anybody has one, you can come over there, just tee us up.
Lovely. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Here from DC.
Yeah,
Question.
man, we got DC, Memphis, London. This is. I knew the Wolves had fans. I knew it.
Yeah, so my question is about Aaron Gordon initiating the offense. I'm curious what you think the response to that looks like. Is it more ball pressure as Gordon brings the ball up court? Is it something else? And if so, is it more minutes for Kyle Anderson to sort of apply that ball pressure instead of Gobert? That's just me spitballing, but I'm curious what you think the response to that might look like.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm starting to wonder if you put Gobert on Jokic. It really neutralized Gobert. I mean, what the combination of Gordon initiating and making threes neutralized Gobert, I thought, in that game. Now, what are the odds that Aaron Gordon again initiates and makes threes? That's the risk there. So for me, if Gordon was a threat that you had to guard on the perimeter, then I don't want Gobert guarding that. And then maybe you invert him and Cat in that sort of way. But to me, it felt like because that look didn't work, and it didn't work from the beginning of the game, that the Wolves defense lost its teeth. So I don't know.
I mean, this is not your first response, but I think one response is to play zone. Sure. I mean, I really think that Gordon guarded on the outside is not going to be that much of a threat. And you still have people in the places they're supposed to be. We'll see. I mean, if Gordon is able to break the zone or pass to the right people, but Denver finished, I think, 30th or 29th in three-point attempts this last season. So they're not used to shooting over defenses.
They don't want to. Porter, that's it. Like, he's the one.
So, I mean, again, I don't know if that's your first response, because I know Finch doesn't like zones. He regards it as a form of surrender, and he just poo-poos the idea of,
They surrendered a lot then this year. I mean, like, it was part
but
of the...
but not usually early, I mean, what he would do is he'd try to establish something, and if it didn't work, he'd go to the zone. But oftentimes also it was a transition thing. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying you're Miami or something. You're going to rely on the zone all the time. But I do think if Aaron Gordon is the guy bringing it up, and you don't want to put other people other than Gobert on him in a classic situation because of all the other matchups on the floor, and your whole idea of putting Cat on Jokic to begin with is for Gobert to roam. If you're doing that, try it, but then the zone is in your pocket.
Well, there's just, you can get weird with it. Like, they're getting weird by having their power forward play point guard. So what you could do is you could have Conley guard him. You could have Ant guard him. Like, you can do.
I also think Naz Reid could pick him up 94 feet.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, just like, see, if you're going to call him a wing like you've done all season, and you want to get weird, why not get weird? But if you're going to go to the Jokic-Gobert matchup, that's another pivot from that is just.
Wasn't it weird when Naz was guarding Jokic and Cat was out there too, and then Cat was on Gordon?
Yeah.
I thought that was bizarre. Probably should ask about that after the game. I don't know. But thank you for the question.
Good question.
Well, yeah, take another one.
First of all, thank you guys for doing this. I think this is an awesome way to bring Wolves fans together.
Thank you.
In my opinion, in my lifetime, this is the best time to be a Wolves fan. So thank you guys for doing
It's
this.
a sick hat. Just says Wolf.
That is a sick hat.
Hey, thank you. My question, Kyle, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but when I watched the game last night, I mean, Gobert was invisible. It was almost like he wasn't even on the floor offensively and a little bit defensively, but not a ton when we're getting killed by 20 the whole game. How do we get him more involved? And I want to challenge you a little bit and say more than pick and roll.
On the energy topic that Dane brought up to begin with, it's not a perfect comparison, but I do think there's some. By the way, everyone I went to high school with is here, and they all have kids. That's why I'm not swearing. But I want to talk about children for a second. When Ant left the Kings game for the birth of his child, there was a game like right after that or something where he was bad, and he went back to that Ant stands in the corner thing, and it seemed like he was almost pouty, but it's like, actually, man, maybe he just doesn't sleep because he's got a newborn. Like, this whole pod theme might just be the human nature of sports and life, that, like, it's been a big week for Rudy Gobert, right? He flies back from Denver. He misses that game. He gets Defensive Player of the Year. But his child is probably 4 days old. So I thought last night was, in this season, that's not even close, right? Like, last night was the worst game Rudy Gobert's played all season. I mean, just from a flat production standpoint, he just had no impact.
I thought it was. I asked him after the game about how are you, just like, and he took the question in a completely different direction, which I think to me means I'm exhausted.
Right, bingo.
Like, I think that was a factor to your challenge about pick and roll. I would challenge you to say, what have you ever seen Rudy Gobert do on offense that isn't pick and roll?
Yeah.
So the thing is right. They're bringing Jokic up to go on to Ant, right? And then they just let Rudy or Kyle Anderson sort of slowly saunter to the basket. They don't care about them. And I think with Rudy Gobert, you can make them care. Like, if you watch it back, Rudy Gobert is wide open. He is wide open. However, it's in a spot where he's going to have to catch, do one thing, and finish. And that gets a little dicey, and the Wolves don't have 10 out of 10 trust in that. They want to throw the lob to him so he can just dunk it there. But right now, they are ignoring Rudy Gobert. And I thought Finch and the rotations and stuff like that, like, Rudy was getting pulled at times to be
Played
short
less
in his
than 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it was just it felt offensive, on the offensive side of the floor. So I don't know. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Of like, should we lean more into Rudy Gobert? Well, that might mean a couple like random hook shots over the basket. But at the same time, I think if you can establish Gobert as a rolling threat, then two guys are on him, and then things open up for Cat and Ant and all of that. Like, it's kind of the bed you made of your offense that includes Rudy Gobert.
2 of Ant's 5 turnovers last night were passes to Gobert.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to get him involved, but the thing that I usually like about Gobert is when he's at the end of the possession rather than in the middle or the beginning of the possession. I think ball movement and moving people around, Gobert needs a little space to finish clean, and that space is provided by other people setting the table for that play to happen. And I didn't see enough of that last night from the offense. Again, some of that was Denver. Again, it's just common sense, but Jamal Murray and Caldwell Pope were moving a lot better. And so they were a better defensive team by definition. Jokic was curiously benign on defense and has been for most of the series. You kind of got the impression he wanted to go home to his horses or something. But, I mean, essentially he has been weird about that.
24, 12, and 9.
Exactly. But 24, 12, and 9 for Jokic is what you'd expect. And 24 and 16 back-to-back. If Nikola Jokic is averaging 20 points a game, pretty good. So, but again, I'm talking also about defense. I actually thought Jokic's by far his best contribution last night was screens. I mean, he was killing. The thing about
Nikhil thought that too.
Well, I mean, but again, what is the Wolves' identity? I know Gobert rim protection is one of the parts, but maybe even more of the parts is on-ball pressure. And the way you generate on-ball pressure is by fighting through screens. And we have a lot of players who do that extremely well. Well, if you got a big, massive dude who is just moving his hips, he's learned how to do this. He's very smart.
It's the KG, right?
Yeah, the KG, the Draymond Green, everybody's got their moving pick icon. But Jokic is really good at it below the waist. What he does is just basically, he doesn't even move his feet sometimes. And Nah got clipped a couple of times that way. Jaden got blocked a couple of times that way. And what that does, for Jaden, there was one time where, I don't hold me to this, but I think what happened is he lost a little bit of space getting screened and had the foul to get back, to get back in the play. He didn't mean to foul, but he was trying to get back into the play. effective screens, Gobert is one of the reasons that the Wolves still have like the highest offensive rating when Gobert's on the floor in the playoffs right now, is because he does that. He frees people all the time. And Jokic was freeing people, I thought, very well last night. And you think of him, points, rebounds, assists. And to be honest with you, I looked up his screen assists, and they weren't any more than they were in Game 1. They were more than they were in Game 2. So I'm not going to say.
Did he have a screen hockey assist?
Yeah,
maybe?
probably. See, that's the thing. But I mean, I don't know. But I do think their hard screening. You could not convince me that wasn't like number 2 in their bullet points during those 3 games, because the screening was so much different.
To close the loop on the Gobert thing, it's a lot easier for me to say this today after what happened, but he front-rimmed 2 free throws in that second quarter, and he has been really good from the free throw line all season. And while Ant's been the MVP of the season, Gobert's been the most consistent. But those 2 front-rimmed free throws, something he's taken pride in, you kind of knew it right away, right? He was a half-inflated inner tube. I would expect the 88 games where he was super consistent this season, including playoffs, to be the Rudy you get tomorrow rather than the post-child, first game, crazy week that he's had, Rudy Gobert.
Yeah. We can take another question. Thank you very much. That was a good one. Yeah, clap it up. Let's go.
What's up?
Hi. So, first of all, you guys are all awesome. Thank you guys for doing this. You guys are some goats. I'm a fan from Georgia, so I appreciate listening to the pod every day.
Man.
And,
We need one of those maps where everyone puts a pin in from the, where they are
Yes.
from.
my question is, in the third quarter, we turned to Jordan McLaughlin to try to give us some kind of spark, and there was some controversy after, did you turn to him? Should you have gone to Monte Morris? I'm just kind of curious on what you guys thought of that insertion of J-Mac there as opposed to Monte, and then as well as, what their roles look like through the rest of the playoffs.
This is all you, Britt. J-Mac specialist.
You know what's crazy? I mean, J-Mac had 2 wide open threes, and he clanked them both. And so everybody goes, why in the world aren't you playing Monte Morris? And maybe there were some people who wanted Monte Morris before they saw J-Mac in the game. But analytics sometimes does tell you things. And Jordan McLaughlin has been a charm on the court for the Timberwolves for years. He was +2 before they brought in the subs who were +7. So Jordan McLaughlin wound up +9 last night. I won't count that +7, but I will mention that he was +2.
Britt told me at halftime. Says
As he
that
was
didn't go well
shitting-
with J-Mac, but he was a +2.
As
That
he was
that
shitting the
direct
bed,
quote.
he was still +2, which is probably should be on his epitaph somewhere. I mean, the guy makes his team better. I can't explain it because sometimes I don't even know why. But I don't
But
think
we know why he played last night, right?
yeah,
Sorry,
because they needed a spark. And Monte Morris is a tremendous on-ball defender. That is the thing that I've been raving about since he arrived here that I did not expect. I expected his assist-to-turnover ratio is phenomenal. He's like Mike Conley in that respect, and probably better than Mike Conley because Conley's assist-to-turnovers have gone very differently in the postseason. But the point being, he's not going to be a dramatic insertion. And at that point in time, the Wolves needed a dramatic insertion. They needed somebody to turn around the game. And you can't think of any times when Monte Morris came into the game and turned it around. You can think of the times, it's not like 100 or even 10, but you can think of like 5 or 6 times during the season where you brought in McLaughlin and boom, oh, here we go. And I think that was what they were reaching for.
Jordan McLaughlin is like the Iowa Wolves Red Bull, right? That you just throw in when the ball was so sticky. They're just taking a ton of threes. There's a ton of different stats about how they so few passes and possessions just kind of come down 1-2 pass, doesn't swing around. And Jordan McLaughlin, like Britt said, is just epitomizes that ball movement. So those shots that he clanked last night, even being +2, are shots that he's kind of regained all of our trust in making. So I would expect that, again, if it gets a little sticky, you throw him in there. But that's just kind of what he does, right? It's like that little energizer bunny to try to see if you get a spark. It didn't work last night, but I would have put him in over Monte Morris, like Britt said.
And Monte played last game. Did you just text me? Is that your brother in the Garza shirt?
Because I was thinking Iowa Wolves.
It is, yeah.
I mean, let's make some noise for an Iowa Wolves Luka Garza shirt, by the way.
Today's show is brought to you by Supreme Lending, and if you are ready for a winning mortgage experience, meet Ben Coulter with the Mortgage Dream Team at Supreme Lending in Edina, Minnesota. With over 20 years in the business, Ben knows how to score big when it comes to mortgage deals. Ben's a dedicated Wolves fan, has supported the team since day one back at the Metrodome. Whether you are looking for your first home, a vacation/investment home, he is here to make your home ownership dreams a reality. The Mortgage Dream Team offers a deep playbook. You can see up on the screen the 8-day close. Close your loan in as fast as 8 days for a leg up on the competition. That's a fast break. $25,000 close on time guarantee. They guarantee your deal closes on time. And then the Minnesota Housing Program, up to $18,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. In addition, if you mention T-Wolves Special, you may be eligible for your first year at 1% below your note rate. Call Ben today at 612-268-5454 or visit twolvesmortgages.com for more info. Let Ben and his team help you win your dream home. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And Your Home Improvement Company has a windows deal going on. Start saving today on your home renovation with new energy efficient triple pane windows. Call Your Home Improvement Company today at 866-777-YHIC for their buy two windows, get two windows free deal. Double the value, double the savings on top of quality materials and stunning design. Or if you're looking to redo your bathroom, YHIC has a deal for 30% off a complete bathroom renovation or a simple tub to shower conversion. It's done by trained and certified professionals in as little as a day. Schedule today and enjoy zero money down, zero interest, and zero payments until 2026. Call Your Home Improvement Company at 866-777-YHIC or go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better.
Yeah, Jacob. Thank you for the question. We're going to take another one.
So this is a two-parter. I'm almost done with my beer. Is A-Rod buying my next beer?
We will. I'll charge it to him.
That was part one.
Okay.
That's part one.
So part two is this is about Minnesota sports in general, but the thing that I loved about Game 2 and hate about Game 3 was it feels like the second Minnesota teams start feeling themselves, they lose. The second we have that swagger, but like we go Game 1, win. Game 2, have more swagger than a team has ever had from Minnesota. Immediately lose Game 3. What is important do you think it's important to have that swagger, and how do you make sure that from game, like the start of the game, first 5 minutes, you have that swagger to show we are those dudes?
I think it's absolutely important, man. I don't know, like, when quickening into becoming something, you should feel good about becoming something. Like, and Kyle, and then I don't know if you're joking or not, but you talk about Good Morning America and media tour and all those things. Like, I just think that comes with the territory more than it's a reasonable excuse. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, rewatching the game this morning, the biggest factor, bigger than fatigue for whatever from the week of the media tour or the officiating, was Denver did better things, and Denver's really good. Like, I think we forgot that this week, and somewhat reasonably so. Like, they didn't play well. They did look like a team that I was like, I don't know, maybe this just move on to Oklahoma City or Dallas or whatever. But they made adjustments. I think the swagger is what got them up 2-0. You know what I'm saying? Like, in Denver to do that, like, it was that vibe. I'm just telling, like, they're, like, in the locker room, the players on the Timberwolves believe they are better than the Denver Nuggets. That was not the vibe. To me, it was not the vibe last year. It was like, let's see, you know? Like, wouldn't you agree with that, Britt? Like, they think they can at least compete with this team. I thought.
Let's talk about raising the bar.
I don't know what that means.
Let's talk about the fact that the Wolves were, what? Was it 45-5 or 47-5? What were they supposed to win?
Oh, wins.
Yeah.
46 and a half. Yeah. Right.
So
Kyle
let's say 47. How many did they win?
56.
So they were +9.
Just like J-Mac.
Were they favored to win Phoenix? No. Were they favored to win Denver? No. They finished
This is like a TikTok
one
comment,
game,
man. I feel it.
one game behind the second best record in the NBA, swept their first round opponent, dominated their second round opponent for 2 games at home, and not you personally, but we just got a question about same old team. You know what I mean? Same old Minnesota deal. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, this team has exceeded expectations in a way that is, I'll tell you right now, everything from here on in is a bonus. We want to be hungry, and they want to be hungry, but this team has put themselves on the map. They have innovated in a way the bigs, skilled bigs philosophy has people thinking about, the same people, by the way, who were cynically being really, really smug about the fact that Gobert trade didn't work last year. And I was not on board with the Gobert trade at the beginning of this year, so I can be included among those in that respect. But my point is, let's give this team credit for what they've already put in their pocket. They've put in their pocket a sustainable formula with a known identity, mixing veterans and young players. They have one of the top marquee players in the game, somebody you pay big money to go watch. And they're at home up 2-1 against the reigning champs right now. I would say last night was a typical letdown that almost any team would have experienced, and it may wind up being, maybe Denver will win it all. But at the end of the day, you have to think that this Timberwolves team deserves the benefit of many doubts, because I've doubted them and I've been wrong. I've doubted them again and I've been wrong again. More I doubt them, the more I'm wrong this season. And if I believe enough to doubt them that way, I will. But that doesn't mean I don't acknowledge that this team is a lot better than I thought they were going to be back then, and they are better than I thought they were going to be 2 weeks ago.
Can I just say, that feels like the most Minnesota sports team. We're so glad to have, we got a good team. I guess the better question is, how do you, instead of taking moral victories, get championships? What do they need? What's that next step to be hey, it's great that we have this good team, but what do we got to move towards?
So I do think it's a good question. And I would say, because we were all blessed enough to be in Phoenix for 3 and 4, my takeaway being in the arena in Phoenix after Game 3, they were also feeling themselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. But Phoenix has no pedigree. They've all done different things individually, but they have done nothing collectively. This opponent in this round has done something really fucking impressive. I'm sorry. But so it's just it's like a video game, right? When you get to levels 2 and 3, that same energy we've talked about. So I'm with Britt in the sense of this season has surpassed our expectations, but I'm also with you that, the Score North mantra of win one before I die. I want to, if they win one title at 35 years old, I do not care what happens for the rest of my life, which will probably be 7 years. So, I don't think they're letting go of the rope. I just think they were pretty confident after Game 3. I think it was Game 3 in Phoenix when Finch kind of bit at that reporter that was I don't care what happened in the first 16 years. They had that same energy, but it's just different when you're going against, a level 1 boss versus a level 5 boss, and the Nuggets are as high of a Bowser as you get in the Mario. So I expect them again to it's been a big conversation, but I think it's just a letdown game, man. One team just wanted it more. No team has ever, come back from down 0 or 3-0. No team has also gone 16-0 in the playoffs. So that's a game Denver has to win. You reset, and if Anthony Edwards is the leader that we all give him credit for all week, we've called him a serial killer. He was just smiling last night. He's like, I was bad. I let everyone down. That's like a serial killer. Like, he's going to come out tomorrow, and whatever shout out to Prize Picks, whatever the Prize Pick number is, it's over.
27.5.
Over.
Thank you. That's a
Good question, though. Good
that's a
question.
good question.
Appreciate all three of you. I love the show. I have a question about, I don't want to talk about the refs, but I want to talk about this team. I want to kind of go back to that Cleveland game, the money sign Rudy game. We had Scott Foster on the call. Last night we had Brothers on the call. This team really struggles when there's a tight whistle. And rather than complaining about the refs, I'm wondering, and I want, Kyle, you mentioned, like, we don't want to say to Jaden, tone it down, right? Tone it down. But what does this team need to do differently? Like, Foster might be on the call game 4. Like, that seems like very realistic. What does this team need to do differently while still staying within its identity to be successful with a tight whistle?
You know when Ant randomly just decides to guard somebody full court? Like we can all kind of picture that. It's like turn, okay, they got past half court. And then he kind of tries to stay in them, right? And he often commits a foul there. Like, do the first 2 turns. Don't do the third one. You just kind of have to have like that clock going in your head. And Ant better not pick up 2 fouls in the first quarter or 3 in the second quarter. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of lack of discipline in this team that I think is understandable, particularly from Ant, Nikhil, Jaden, and Naz, who are all 24 and under. And my hope would be today at practice, that's what they're talking about is feel it out. Feel out what the whistle is and adjust accordingly. It's part of the game. Now we know. Now we know that's part of the game, and this team thrives on physicality and playing that sort of way. But push that to whatever the limit is, and with the coaching staff, with your teammates, ask yourself that, and don't allow yourself to get frustrated that it isn't. You know what I mean? Like, those are going to be the rules for the night, and you're going to be mad at them, and after the fact, you can vent about them. But they're going to call the game with those rules, and the score is going to be defined within that, in that time. So I think it's playing the mental game. It's thinking it, right? That's my whole thing of why I completely changed my whole idea of what this team's ceiling was because of the idea that I think this team just started thinking the game a lot more. Ant in the first round against Phoenix. Now can you think Ant in the first round offensively? Now can you think defense in this series? Not just in terms of physicality, guarding Gordon, guarding Jokic, all those sort of things. This is what it takes to win the playoffs, man. It is hard, and it is meticulous, and it is over and over and over again. I think they can, but if the reaction is woe's me, they called 2 fouls here, there's still 2 fouls. You know what I mean? Like it can't be something to get consumed in my opinion.
Ann said this once, just make them foul me out. Didn't Ann have a really famous quote? He's like, they're not going to foul me out of this game. Like, I'm box office. Make them foul Anthony Edwards out of the game. So to the turning them, I'm almost with you. Like, I'm down for turn 3 still. Like, just be as physical. I'm with you, by the way. I'm with you on the whole, like, be smart thing. But I just am so against it. If you finally have developed an identity for the first time in 20 years, that you're going to all of a sudden be like, let's tone it down. I would bring that same level of defensive intensity you had in Game 2, and then just to your point, like, then adjust. My complaint from Game 3 was that I didn't think they adjusted. And that was my whole talk about the
the officiating?
Yeah, to the officiating. They just didn't adjust.
We are saying the same thing.
Yeah. We agree. Good friends.
I think a tight whistle the next game will actually benefit Minnesota, because I think Anthony Edwards is going to go to the cup a lot more, and he's going to get fouls, and he's going to wind up like 8 of 10 from the line.
Learns from failure. This didn't work. I'm going to do that differently. Yep.
And I actually think that the way Ant acted in the locker room, it was like, if you want to talk to me, fine. I'm just going to shine you guys on until you leave so that I can get ready for the next game. Yeah. And what he was thinking about was that I bought a little bit too much into this move the ball, and we lost in a major way. At the very least, I'm going to try to see what they're like at the rim next game. That's what I got out of it. And I think if they have a tight whistle and the Wolves get called for a few at one end, and Ant drives. I think if Anthony Edwards has 10 free throws in the next game, it's worth a few more fouls on McDaniels and Gobert.
Yep. Good question.
I want to get to your question, but I wrote one other thing down in my notes, and this is just a random at the game thing. I think it was our friend Katie Davidson tweeted this out. Who is the Wolves player, like former Wolves player, that you would like to see at the game and like on the Jumbotron, like, hey, that guy. Like, you've covered every single player. Yeah, we know KG. Everyone's calling KG.
Well, I mean, KG would be an electrifying presence there. KG has a blood feud with the current owner, and that's not going to change. So, by the way, I think KG, I've always had an enormous amount of respect for him, and the fact that he is weighing in on these playoffs as a fan, as what I regard as one of the top 5 defenders I've ever watched play, and he is reacting like a guy watching TV and enjoying what he sees. That's my kind of player. That's a guy who loves basketball and is saying, hey, Pacers, Knicks, great game by both of you. Good balling. I mean, just, you compare that to Shaq, who's just, looking down at his private parts to see if they're still as large as they used to be, So, at the end of the day...
Two blind men trying to find the elephant, right?
Or in this case, the goat. But, I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say.
So you want Shaq there. It
Oh,
sounds
yeah,
like we want Shaq
the player. KG would be great. John Krasinski, of all people, said the right answer.
Backup point guard John Krasinski.
Yeah, that's right. Who's loses a step on J-Mac, but otherwise is a very similar player. I think Gorgie Jang was his choice, and I will tell you, Gorgie Jang is one of my favorite players of all time to cover. Cat would walk into the locker room, and he would be staring daggers at Cat, even when by the time we get in there, and would basically say things about it's not that hard to guard this way. And, I mean, everything was like, one of the reasons I got rid of Gorgie Jang is because he was making life hell for Karl Anthony Towns in terms of the fact that he thought he played defense better, and he did, but he also overdid it because he was so personally angry about the way he played. That's one aspect. Another aspect is Gorgie Jang, everybody would be in the locker room, the media would be there, microphones would be everywhere. Gorgie put down his little towel, the one you don't even cover yourself with because it's too small, and pray to Mecca and not worry about what anybody else was doing at that particular time. He was following his faith, and he was true to it, and he didn't make a big deal out of it. He just did it. And then the third thing is his philanthropy in Africa is legendary. That is a good dude. So I'd love to see him come back, and I'd love for everybody to stand up and say, you gave us everything you had. You were not a great player, but you were an impactful player,
In terms of...
There was a lot of not great players in the Timberwolves, but there's been few that have simultaneously been impactful.
In terms of Katie's question of former Timberwolves players to show up, those are all good. I would probably say Jimmy Butler because he doesn't have other shit going on right now. And then for him to just learn that actually they could win without you.
It's a good answer. Gorgie was actually my answer. You gave John, backup point guard John, credit for that.
Oh, really? Apologies.
Retro jersey, I need this question.
All right, so first I want to start out, listen to every episode. I talk to one of my buddies constantly about the show, so shout out to you, Ryan. I know you're not here, but he'll
Love
listen.
it, man.
This is
Shout out to Ryan.
Love it.
It's released. But my question is what the dynamic between Finch and Norrie is right now currently, and if we think that has impacted or will impact the team in the future.
I honestly thought it was so there's a lot of media at these games, so we're all kind of in different sections. And Kyle, you have the like straight on look at Finch. You brought that up to me on the pod last night that he looked.
The best part about this, by the way, this is on camera, so even if I am wrong, like no one can prove I'm wrong. But there were multiple times where like Finch would have just taken a heated timeout to stop a run, and he was like, and Micah didn't do it, and Finch is kind of yelling at him. But again, Micah Nori has to be in one of the most undesirable spots ever to be trying to stand in literally on his 2 legs for the second or third best coach in the league this season. So I think it's a really tough spot, but it was one game. I think those first 6, or not first 6 because it wasn't all Micah, but those first 2 in Denver were all Micah, right? He's the guy standing up, and I think that whole relationship, I think Finch's entire staff is on it. Like, as good as the defense is, right, they're all on one string. I think his entire staff, he constantly, you guys know this more because you're at practice, he constantly is talking them up, and every specific guy has a role, whether it be with offense, defense, player development, but I think it is a little bit of a challenge for Finch to not be out there, but I also, outside of that moment, those couple moments last night where you knew Finch wanted to either make an adjustment, get a sub in, call a timeout, I think Mike has done an incredible job in a spot that's almost impossible to succeed at.
No, I'm with that. I'm with that 100%. I just as like a kind of a random aside, I think like, and Britt, you actually wrote a story on this earlier in the season. Like the Finch coaching staff thing is crazy. Like it's all these guys he like inherited, and then it's a bunch of other like random sort of pieces that came together. And I think it's like, I think in many ways it's the perfect encapsulation of like who Finch is, right? And he does have an ability to relate to, communicate with kind of anyone. And of course, like you're operating uphill in needing to coach from the second row and all those sort of things. I'm not suggesting it's not an issue. I'm pretty sure it would be a bigger issue on all 29 other teams. There is like a continuity there, particularly between him and Micah, that I think makes it not that big of a deal.
You know, one like random thing, but we talk about the 03-04 team, right? What you're wearing all the time, the most successful team. That team loses to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers lose to the Pistons in 03-04 in the championship. You know who's on that Pistons 03-04 team? Corliss Williamson.
Big nasty.
Who is now on this Wolves staff. So, I mean, they just have so many really well-respected, well-traveled assistants, and I think they all help Micah. But it's definitely something, right? I mean, when's the last time you saw your head coach of any team, like, with one leg? But I do think it's just a dynamic that they've done so far a really good job of finding ways. I mean, Jace Frederick wrote a really interesting story on this, and this is weird, but, like, how Finch is just doing Tylenol for something that's a really painful thing and not doing pain. Like, he wants to be in the moment. He's at practices. He's doing media availability. He's literally limping up the stairs to post and pregame stuff. So I think it's a dynamic, but I think they've handled it really well.
I think Micah Nori is a fantastic assistant coach. And I think he is an ideal person to sit next to Chris Finch. And what they do is talk constantly throughout the game. This is, Micah Nori is one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and is one of those guys that when you meet, I mean, I shook his hand like 15 minutes before the opening tip last night because he reached out and said, "Hey, Britt, how you doing?" I wasn't going to bother him. He's just that kind of guy. So what I'm going to say right now is not comfortable for me, but I covered Jimmy Rogers his first year here. And Jimmy Rogers has a bunch of rings for being second in command for the Boston Celtics. He was great at it. I think Micah Nori is a fantastic alter ego for Chris Finch. When I did a story on Micah, he relayed to me that when he was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Pistons, he was calling Finch every other week to find out if he was doing the right things. Now, he's grown since then, and his gift is being a straight shooter with his players and massaging people, but also giving them a reason for why things aren't going well for them. All those things are great things for assistant coaches to have. It is my personal belief that Micah Nori deserves a shot as a head coach. It is also my personal belief that he would be better off staying here because he is better suited to be Finch's right-hand man.
Good question.
Thank you very much.
Let's go
We can grab maybe a couple more here.
Let's go 3 more and then just start drinking.
Yeah. We're gonna hang out. It's early and have some beers in there. I think there's another game on starting. Is the Pacers Knicks game on? So we'll be here hanging out. If you don't feel comfortable coming up and asking a question, come up and say hello and everything afterwards. Again, this is just so cool. It's really cool that you guys are all here and getting the chance to experience this. Oh, he's got his shirt on from last night. There we go, and the chain. Let's go.
It was painful. I want to thank you guys. I'm from Southern California, so it's kind of lonely being a Timberwolves fan out in Southern California in Laker country. So,
boo, Lakers.
So this was my anniversary present, so they have to win tomorrow. This feels like kind of a therapy session, doesn't it? I mean, I'm looking at all these faces. We're an abused fan base. We've been with this team for 35 years. What is your guys' opinion on tomorrow being the dreaded must-win? Like, momentum is a thing. What is your feeling about moving forward, regardless of tomorrow, how it goes?
I'm excited to see if they can do it. Because if they do it, now you're in a really, really good position to move forward to the next round, to the conference finals. And back to the question a little while ago, moral victory and all this and that. I don't know. I was always under the impression that Ant would need to get a little bit older before the team was going to be at this level. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's the end of the world or anything if they don't get it. I'm just excited to see if they could do it and do it faster than we maybe thought they could have. And I understand the timeline isn't perfect and Rudy's getting up there and Mike's getting up there and all those sort of things. But I think they get that too. And I think even Ant in his head, or if you want to call it Ant, Jaden, and Nas, that kind of crew, they're like, they know this isn't it for them, but it might be one of the only times, And I'm curious to see how much they internalize that and how much that leads to the meticulous stuff that they're going to need to do. I feel like I've said this in a lot of different ways all playoffs. Playoffs isn't a time to just hoop. The playoffs is a time to play and to think and to execute. And in many ways, Ant, Jaden, and Nas are hoopers. And that's what makes them great. It makes them super fun to watch. But what do they do now? What do they do now when you are playing Jokic? You are playing Jamal Murray, who looks like Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon. This Denver team is really, really good. I'm excited to see, what is the response there, and I guess in many ways it's going to define this season, but I don't doubt their ability to be able to do that, though I will understand if they don't, if that makes sense.
What's the worst case scenario if they blow this series? You're sad? We've been sad for 20 fucking years. You know what I mean? So this is the first Timberwolves postseason podcast in St. Paul ever. Because again, when the last time the Wolves were good, it was all MySpace, no Twitter. So and I'm with you though. Last night that arena sucked and it just felt bad. And then Dane's like, we got to do a pod. And I'm like, I don't want to. We just have to at some point trust that to Dane's Hooper standpoint, these guys, Finch is different. He doesn't care about the past. Those guys don't know. Ant doesn't know who A-Rod is. You think he knows who Luke Ridnour is? They don't care, and I think at some point we have to give them I'm with you, I feel you, but we have to give them the benefit of the doubt of again, you wake up tomorrow, happy Mother's Day, by the way, to Dane's mom who's here.
Yeah, Mom.
And to my mom, Annie, in the back. You're going to wake up tomorrow on Mother's Day and take your mom to brunch, and the Wolves are up 2-1, and you have a home game. And until they break our heart again, and again, I'm sad again, every May, okay, whatever. But I said this last week to Dane, and then Dane said it to me on the drive over here. Tuesday. Tuesday's the lottery. We're not in it, right? So let all those teams figure out ping pong balls. Let's focus on basketballs tomorrow. And I just think until this team does eventually maybe let us down, I'm going to ride with them and all in on what this specific 15-man group is doing.
In answer to your question, which was, is this a must-win tomorrow? My answer is not necessarily. No. The Celtics, I think, had a better road record, the only team that did, but they played predominantly Eastern Conference teams. I think this was the best road team in the NBA this year. They have never lost 3 in a row all season long. One of the things that you have to say about this team is that, yes, hoopers are definitely a part of their personality. But you cannot have Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson on your team and not have it be a team that is ready to recover if necessary. And I also think...
And all 3 of those guys played like crap last night.
Yes, they did. A good point. Anthony Edwards doesn't want to wait. If he does wait, it will not be passively. If it's 2-2, and it's 2 out of 3, and 2 of those games are in Denver and 1 of those games is in Minnesota, everybody's going to have a lot of fun.
Boom.
I think I speak for a lot of people here. I am enjoying the ride. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I just think it was the emotional whiplash between the greatest game they played all year, and then we could tell in the first 5 minutes last night that it was the intensity on either side of the ball was not there.
Here's what I will say about that. I've covered this team for 35 years. I never expect to see a defensive performance as good as I saw in Denver on Monday night. It just doesn't happen. I mean, you talk about unicorns. This is if a unicorn in the 4-leaf clover had a baby. I mean, essentially, it just was a freak occurrence. The whistle was light. The team was ready. The fact that Gobert was out probably eased off Denver's opinion of what this defense was going to be like. Naz Reid, if he plays 3/4 of the way he played that night, he will become a star in this league. So what I like to do is savor the high points, accept the low points, and be realistic about what you have in front of you. And so what I would say is they earned those 2 wins in Denver. They earned them. And it was expected in retrospect, as to my first answer today, that they would lose that Game 3 because of everything that happened. And they might lose this one. Denver's a great team. But they're not going down it's not going to be like a walkover from now on.
To the Ant point, right? He wants it now. Last year was the test, the splash around in the water time. He's ready to go individually. The question is the opponent and the rest of the group. We'll take one more question here.
All right. Another out-of-towner here came in from Baltimore on Thursday.
So is anybody here from Minneapolis or St. Paul? We got a couple of them, yeah. Love it, man. That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you putting on these. I went to the one on Thursday as well. Really, really great stuff. My question's about Nikhil. Had sustained that shoulder injury the other night, played through it, seemed like he was impacted. Obviously, was really frustrated at the end of the game, got that very uncharacteristic technical. Just curious, what were you seeing, were you hearing about that after the game? What do you think the possible impact might be? And, Bill Simmons' percentage index, what percentage healthy do you think he is going into tomorrow?
I think we heard that he's good. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he was at practice today. I think the Wolves posted the injury report tweet. No one's on it, so he's not even questionable. So he's clearly going to play tomorrow. Is he going to be limited? We'll find out. But I don't know anything about the human body, despite coming from a medical family background. But yeah, he struggled to take his jersey off last night. But he also did all the media, talked about how he let himself down a little bit with that technical. So in terms of like the toughness factor on this team, another reason why it's like this is just not the same Timberwolves team we're used to. He might be up there in terms of just flat out dogs, and he will sub in tomorrow night right after Naz Reid, and he will give everything. And I probably expect a bounce back Nickeil game.
I think he'll be slightly diminished. I think that he got dinged really hard. I saw after that first pick that really rattled him. He kept on going like this. And when he tried to put his left arm over his head to block a shot.
He lost his handle on that one, too, remember?
Yeah. He's a gamer. It's game 4. He's suddenly, I mean, you talk about guys who are pinching themselves. He is having a series and a season that is what he dreamed about at the age of 6 in his bed. I mean, he will play, I'm sure. I think he is diminished.
Let's go one more bonus question brought to you by Dual Citizen, the best brewery in St. Paul. Yeah. You've been standing in the heat for like 45 minutes, so I want you, our security guard in the back in the Minnesota thing, who's also my dad part-time, he wanted you to ask this question, so let's hear it.
Thanks. Going back to just gameplay from last night, and I have still quite a lot to learn. Can you help me understand why the ball didn't go back to Cat? He was hot and then just didn't shoot. Is it the Timberwolves? Is it the defense? Why did that happen?
I think it's super important to keep Cat one pass away from Ant, particularly as they start loading up on Ant, which we've seen periodically here, right? And what that means is other players who are guarding other players leaving Cat, leaving Rudy, leaving whoever to try to take away Ant. And it's a pretty easy solve for that. Like if Ant is up top, Cat one pass away right there and shoot it. And he did it, There's going to, in that lag time of just engage the defense, swing it to Cat. If Cat takes it and shoots it immediately, like that's there. That's there in this series. That's going to be there. It was there in Phoenix. It will be there going forward. Teams are going to prioritize Ant, and the way you punish that is keeping Cat one pass away and Cat shooting it, which he did in the first half. I actually leave that game extremely encouraged by Cat. The energy, all that, like you said to me, you're like, what do you think Cat's going to be like here in the first quarter? Like,
Absolutely.
This is a lot, like, as he was walking out there. And I think Cat is feeling this in this moment. He's been here for a decade almost. Like, I think he's dialed in. And I think he will, and he has adhered to what the stuff is that he needs to do in this series. We know he can shoot it, like, I'm saying like 10 plus threes. That has got to be the thing. And from Ant, I think those things are there. The whole offense just evolved in the second half, trying to chase back a lead. If the game was 4, 6, 8 points or whatever, I think there wouldn't have been as much of a home run swing. It'd just be like, all right, run the ball. Just keep doing the things over and over again. If they're helping on Ant, find Cat. Like, it's not. The defensive side of the floor is complicated. The offensive side of the floor for the Wolves does not need to be complicated. And when they're rolling, it doesn't look complicated, and it works. I think there's answers to get more Cat there, and I think they didn't show up because they fell back by as many as they did.
First of all, I think it's an excellent question. I was asking myself the same thing after the game, quite frankly. I think it was a failure of planning on the sideline, of game planning to some extent. I think that it was also Cat's natural tendency to try to be the guy who does the right thing and doesn't, like, hog the ball. Cat was being guarded in a way that he wasn't getting open looks. But at that particular time, the way everyone else was shooting, I would have liked to have seen a couple of contested looks from him that weren't happening.
But that's the thing, right, Britt, is like when you want to go to Cat at volume, it's in the post. And we know they don't want to go to Cat in the post at volume. So the question is, like, how do you get 15, 18 shots from Cat when 9 of them aren't
What
post
you
up?
were saying is accurate. I'm not, and I think that you are right that operating an offense where it's a simple pass. It's not a surprise pass. It's just that if you have Cat and Ant 15 feet away from each other, both behind the arc, guard that. See what happens. And you either have an open look for Cat, a single team on Ant, or somebody open in the corner or in the box. So it is simple in that respect. And they did not exploit that enough, in my opinion. Denver played really well. I don't think they game planned for that particular thing to happen. Dane is right that that is the best way to go. The Wolves did not emphasize that, and they also did not exploit the times when they could have not had it be ideal, but had it be realistic that Cat would get the ball and shoot.
What he said? I'm trying to get empanada, but we want to wrap this up and respect everyone's time. But I just want to say quickly this has been the most fun I've ever had doing any of this, and this week has been awesome, and everyone that showed up tonight should give yourself a round of applause. It's hot, and seriously, it means the world to me and to Britt and to Dane. But my new best friend, Dane's mom, we went over the rankings today, and we wake up on Saturday, and the Wolves drop a game. And Minnesota's own Dane Moore had the 9th most popular podcast in the country. It's Shaq, it's LeBron, and then it's Dane Moore. So I just want to say on behalf of me and Britt, we appreciate you and everything you've done. And then none of that's possible without everyone here. So thank you so much for the support and listening and all the comments. And again, 2-1 Sunday, Target Center. It should be, as Carl Anthony Towns has said once or twice, it should be like a movie. So I'm excited to be there with these guys, and thank you to everyone for all the support because it means the world to us.
I love it. I love it. It's really cool to meet random people who you have a common interest in, right? And for me, in my career, these two have been two people. Kyle's from North Dakota, Britt's from Boston. We never would have met each other if it wasn't for the Timberwolves. Are two of my best friends in my life. And I think that is one of the coolest things about basketball in general, has been true in my entire life, is it's brought people together, created relationships, whether that's when we were playing or now when we're like super washed or drinking beers at Dual Citizen. So this is really cool. Excited to hang out with a lot of you this afternoon. Thank you for supporting the show. Game 4, let's get it. Appreciate you. For Britt Robson and for Kyle Theige, I'm Dane Moore. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.